And I'm very happy that I can start this video with such great news. Gran Turismo 7 is supporting the HDR calibration menu on the PlayStation 5. And if you now think that setting up HDR in Gran Turismo 7 is very easy, then you're absolutely wrong. There are of course a couple of things what we have to consider, but the most important part is that we set up the HDR calibration menu on the PlayStation 5 in the correct way. And yeah, on TVs with HGiG support, that's actually quite easy. Before you now start adjusting the screen, make sure TV is really set to HGiG, otherwise you will end up with wrong values in terms of the maximum peak brightness. So HGiG is set, and now we are not going to follow the instructions. So all what you do is actually we're increasing the brightness until we can't see the sun at all, okay? That's the first page. Second page, we do exactly the same. We're increasing the brightness until we can't see the sun at all. Third page, we don't want to see any part of the sun, okay? So make sure this is grayed out, that you're completely on 0, and then you just press OK and you're good to go with HGiG. But what can we do now if our TV does not support HGiG and we just have the options dynamic tone mapping on or off, or maybe no option at all? I tried this of course, and if I would use right now dynamic tone mapping off to set up this menu, I would tell Gran Turismo 7 that my TV is capable of outputting 3200 candela, which of course is way too much for this TV. So the only thing what I can tell you right now is I can tell you how many clicks I'm using when I'm setting up my TV with HGiG. And in the first 2 pages there are 14 clicks, okay, until the sun is completely gone, okay? 14 clicks here, 14 clicks here as well until the sun is completely gone, and of course as always 0 clicks here. That's for my HGiG, and then we have actually a maximum peak output from around 800 candela. So the next couple of days what I'm going to do is releasing a video where I measured all the steps or clicks from this very menu, and I will provide a table and I will show you actually how many clicks are how much candela or nits, okay? So again, 14 clicks for my HGiG is around 800 candela. I know 15 clicks is around 930 and stuff like that, but I like to measure the whole range here, and then I will provide this information to you because I really think it is very important that we set up this menu in the correct way, even with or on TVs where no HGiG is supported. Setting up the HDR calibration menu on the PlayStation 5 with 14 clicks on the first 2 pages, that's the result then. We're ending up with maximum 840 nits output. And again, this at this very moment is what the game is asking to output. That's not the real brightness, because I was actually able to measure on this very bright spot around 660 candela real brightness, okay? And you can see that this is actually very bright here. We're going into orange, a little bit red already. But the reason that there are just a few orange parts actually, this is the reason why I was able to measure 660 candela real brightness, and this is actually very bright for the HGiG. This screenshot is a little bit different. The game is asking to output 760 candela, a little bit less compared to the other screenshot, and when we look at the luminance heat map, then we can see much more orange part in this picture, which means we already way above SDR brightness. SDR brightness is around the yellow and everything below, but orange is already way above SDR brightness. So that's the reason why I was not able to measure 660 candela anymore at this very moment, but still it was very, very bright and nice to watch. Okay, so let's talk about the image settings, what we have. Unfortunately, what we have in addition to the HDR calibration support on the PlayStation 5, because I don't like to see actually any additional settings in the game when the HDR calibration menu is supported, because it doesn't make much sense, okay? I would like to leave this up to the PlayStation or Xbox and of course to my TV to decide what is best. But unfortunately we have a couple of options like saturation and exposure. So saturation is actually quite easy because it really just tells you or asks you, or you can decide how colorful you like the game. And I have to say, I'm actually quite happy with saturation set to 100. In terms of the exposure, this setting is a little bit more tricky. Okay, let me clarify one thing. There is no must or need that you actually change this value from 0, because the standard setting is already okay. Just okay, not very good, but okay. But of course, if you like to have the best experience on your HGiG in combination with HGiG, then of course we need to do a little bit of adjustment. So let's start with a quick explanation. What is exposure actually doing? And very simple, it's changing brightness, but not just in general on the whole screen, especially on very bright objects. And that's a problem, or let's say like this, that's a problem on the HGiG or in general on OLED TVs, because we have a very aggressive automatic brightness limiter on OLED TVs, and the brighter you actually like your picture, the less maximum peak brightness is available for objects like the sun. And just to explain you a little bit further what I'm talking about, when I measured this very scene, I was able to measure 590 candela with exposure set to 0. When I changed this to -5, I was actually able to measure on the very same object 660 candela, a little bit higher than 660 candela. So that means when we decreasing the overall brightness from the picture, we're getting more brightness or maximum peak brightness on very, very bright objects. Not just here the sun, also on lights or stuff like that. This is what I found. So with setting to 0, we're actually limiting the HGiG, at least my HGiG, in terms of the maximum peak brightness. But as always, there's a problem, because we can't just, I mean we can, but we shouldn't just decrease or increase values just because, to match our other value, okay? Because the whole picture has to be, has to fit together. Okay, let's say it like this, okay? And of course, it's more important actually what you think is right and not what any values are telling you, okay? So again, if I leave this at 0, I have less maximum peak brightness at this very moment, but that doesn't mean this is wrong or right. When I'm changing this to 0.44 or 0.5, then I have almost the maximum peak brightness from my TV at this very moment. But again, that doesn't mean it's now right or wrong. At the end, it is really important what you like. Do you like a little bit of a darker picture in general, and you like to have more peak brightness on very bright objects like the sun, lights, reflections, whatever? Or do you like to have a more brighter picture in general, and you're happy that the maximum peak brightness is not as it can be? But to be very honest, the difference what you can see at the moment, and this is around, let's say 600 candela, and this is around 660 candela, it's very hard for the eye actually to tell the difference. Very hard. Of course, if I would have a side-by-side comparison and stuff like that, we can clearly tell a difference. But at this very moment, it is very hard. And for me, actually, it is, that's my personal opinion, it is more important to have a brighter picture in general, because right now we're talking about a very bright sun here. So I'm expecting actually that the rest from the picture, especially the track and the surroundings, are also very, very bright. And this is not happening actually when I'm using 0.5. Okay, so let's continue here because we're still not finished. If you like to have the highest peak brightness, real peak brightness in this game, and you're using an OLED TV like the LG Z1 or a similar TV with HGiG support, then you have to try actually settings like -0.3, 0.4 or 0.5, okay? Around this or those values, okay? Don't go below 0.5 because it is already way too much. And also don't use 0.0, the standard value, and don't increase this at all because it will just clip all the objects, okay? So again, if you like to have the highest possible peak brightness in terms of very bright objects, then you have to reduce this actually to around 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. But if you don't like to use HGiG and you'd like to use dynamic tone mapping on, and again, I don't think dynamic tone mapping off is a good choice in this game, but I will show you a little bit of comparison between DTM on, off and HGiG of course in a second. Leave this value if you use dynamic tone mapping on, okay? Leave it to 0 or 0, standard setting. And the reason is very simple. Dynamic tone mapping on is anyway not very accurate when it comes to displaying very bright fine details, okay? It will clip all the time, and I will show you this in a second as well, compared to HGiG, especially in this game, because we have a lot of very fine details on the cars, especially in replays and in the night with lights and stuff like that. Dynamic tone mapping on is not the best choice actually if you like to have a very detailed HDR effects, let's say it like this. But of course there's, as always, a very big difference between HGiG and dynamic tone mapping on in the base brightness. But again, if you like to use dynamic tone mapping on, leave it as it is, because I found that's the best value for my TV. And as always, we have a very big difference when it comes to brightness between HGiG and dynamic tone mapping on. And I have to say, or my personal opinion is that some tracks, not all of them, but some are a little bit too dark or too dim with HGiG. Others are perfectly fine playable. In this case, at this very moment, this track, I really think HGiG is a little bit too dark, because when we have a look here, we have, I mean, it's not, maybe not noon or whatever, but we have no clouds, almost no clouds, and we have a very bright sun here. So I'm expecting actually the same from the track or the surroundings here, but with HGiG, it appears a little bit too less. Yeah, it looks like that a little bit is missing. So again, this is not for all the tracks, just for some tracks. Actually, in other tracks, in most of the tracks, dynamic tone mapping on is a little bit too bright, but this is, yeah, it's of course your own preference as well. And very important, of course, the environment where are you playing, because if you play in a very complete dark room, in an almost pitch black dark room, then I would actually recommend to play in HGiG and not in dynamic tone mapping on. But the other way around, if you play in a very bright environment, then HGiG is most likely too dark for you. Okay, so what is my summary? What is my recommendation to play this game? So let's start easy. HDR in this game, it just looks amazing, phenomenal. Really, I have to say, especially night with rain and stuff like that, it is just wow to watch or play this game on a TV like this, the OLED LG CX. And the only thing what I'm looking forward is actually to get a TV, hopefully in the next 2 months, with a much higher peak brightness. Not quite sure if I'm going for OLED. I don't think at this very moment, because I'm really looking for a TV which with at least twice as much peak brightness as this TV, because this is one of the reasons why HGiG appears to be dark compared to dynamic tone mapping on, because of the just 750 candela maximum peak brightness from this TV. If we would have a maximum peak brightness around 1500, then HGiG wouldn't be that dark. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why I'm going to not upgrade, because this TV is still one of the best TVs. Okay, so the C1 and even the C2 probably, there's not much difference. Okay, maybe always a little bit higher peak brightness, but picture quality wise, almost no difference. Okay, so the LG CX still a great TV. Anyway, off topic, too much off topic. What is my recommendation? And this is always completely up to you. HGiG or dynamic tone mapping on. It does make a good job, dynamic tone mapping on in this game. Not entirely in replays, especially in the night and with very bright details like headlights and stuff like that. But the overall impression from the dynamic tone mapping on is actually quite good. So it really depends on you. Where are you playing? Are you playing in a complete dark room? Are you playing in a complete bright room or very bright room? Then it's your choice. Dynamic tone mapping on, much brighter base brightness, or HGiG, more accurate HDR but less brightness. base brightness, not maximum peak brightness, okay? Also, if you like to use HGiG with the best or most accurate HDR, then you have to use, or you have to change actually exposure to around -3, -4, -5, okay? -5 is already on the latest end, okay? So I would start with -3, of course, and just have a look how it is. But 0 and HGiG will clip details, okay? That's how it is, even with setting up the maximum peak brightness in the calibration menu. So that's it, I think, for this video. I think I didn't miss anything. So the only thing what I haven't told you, of course, is if you're new to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. So that's the only thing what is left. And of course, that all my settings and my findings are based on my LG ZX TV. And I get a lot of response, and I'm so sorry actually that I can't help people when some people are asking with a Q90 LCD, what is my recommendation? It is very hard to recommend anything if I haven't seen it or tested it. It's very, very hard. I know that the Q90 has a much higher peak brightness than my LG ZX, but just then to make any assumptions, I can't do this, because at the end, you know, then I'm telling you something and it doesn't work out and you say, I don't like this guy anymore. So I'm going to buy a new TV this year, of course this year, because it's just March or whatever. In the next couple of months, of course, when the new TVs are in the shops, I will decide what to get, and I will go with a TV with a much higher peak brightness this time. Again, not because I think this TV is not good anymore, just because to have a different reference. That's all, okay? So that's what I like to do, and I really think it's enough for this video, okay? Thank you very much, and I see you guys next time. Don't forget to subscribe, okay? Thank you very much. See you.